Good evening. Welcome back to our reading from John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress. We'll get right back to it after a break of a couple of weeks. It says, I saw also in my dream that when the shepherds perceived that they were wayfaring men, they also put questions to them, to which they made answer as in other places, as, Whence came you? And how got you into the way? And by what means have you so persevered therein? For but few of them that begin to come hither do show their face on these mountains. But when the shepherds heard their answers, being pleased therewith, they looked very lovingly upon them and said, Welcome to the delectable mountains. The shepherds, I say, whose names were Knowledge, Experience, Watchful, and Sincere, took them by the hand and had them to their tents and made them partake of that which was ready at present. They said, moreover, We would that ye would stay here a while to be acquainted with us, and yet more to solace yourselves with the good of these delectable mountains. They then told them that they were content to stay, so that they went to their rest that night because it was very late. Then I saw in my dream that in the morning the shepherds called up to Christian and Hopeful to walk with them upon the mountains. So they went forth with them and walked a while, having a pleasant prospect on every side. Then said the shepherds one to another, Shall we show these pilgrims some wonders? So when they had concluded to do it, they had them first to the top of a hill called Error, which was very steep on the furthest side, and bid them look down to the bottom. So Christian and Hopeful looked down and saw at the bottom several men dashed all to pieces by a fall that they had had from the top. Then said Christian, What meaneth this? The shepherds answered, Have you not heard of them that were made to err by hearkening to Hymenaeus and Philetus as concerning the faith of the resurrection of the body? They answered, Yes. Then said the shepherds, Those that you see lie dashed in pieces at the bottom of this mountain are they. And they have continued to this day unburied, as you see, for an example to others to take heed how they clamber too high, or how they come too near the brink of this mountain. Then I saw that they had them to the top of another mountain, and the name of that is Caution, and bid them look afar off, which, when they did, they perceived, as they thought, several men walking up and down among the tombs that were there. And they perceived that the men were blind, because they stumbled sometimes upon the tombs, and because they could not get out from among them. Then said Christian, What means this? The shepherds then answered, Did you not see a little below these mountains a stile that led into a meadow on the left hand of this way? And they answered, Yes. Then said the shepherds, From that stile there goes a path that leads directly to Doubting Castle, which is kept by Giant Despair. And these, pointing to them among the tombs, came once on pilgrimage, as you do now, even till they came to that same stile. And because the right way was rough in that place, they chose to go out of it into that meadow, and there they were taken by Giant Despair and cast into Doubting Castle. Where after they had been there a while kept in the dungeon, he at last did put out their eyes, and led them among those tombs, where he has left them to wonder to this very day, that the saying of the wise men might be fulfilled, He that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Then Christian and Hopeful looked upon one another with tears gushing out, but yet said nothing to the shepherds. Then I saw in my dream that the shepherds had them to another place, in a bottom, where was a door in the side of a hill, and they opened the door and bid them look in. They looked in, therefore, and saw that within it was very dark and smoky. They also thought that they heard there a rumbling noise as of fire, and a cry of some tormented, and that they smelt the scent of brimstone. Then said Christian, What means this? The shepherds told them, This is a byway to hell, a way that hypocrites go in at, namely, such as sell their birthright with Esau, such as sell their master with Judas, such as blaspheme the gospel with Alexander, and that lie and dissemble with Ananias and Sapphira his wife. Then said Hopeful to the shepherds, I perceived that these had on them, even every one, a show of pilgrimage, as we have now. Had they not? The shepherds said, Yes, and held it a long time too. Hopeful said, How far might they go on in pilgrimage in their day, since they notwithstanding were thus miserably cast away? The shepherds said, Some further, and some not so far as these mountains. Then said the pilgrims one to another, We have need to cry to the strong for strength. And the shepherd said, Aye, and you will have need to use it when you have it too. By this time the pilgrims had a desire to go forward, and the shepherds a desire that they should. So they walked together towards the end of the mountains. Then said the shepherds one to another, Let us here show to the pilgrims the gates of the celestial city, if they have skill to look through our perspective glass. The pilgrims then lovingly accepted the motion. So they had them to the top of a high hill called Clear, and gave them their glass to look. Then they essayed to look, but the remembrance of that last thing that the shepherds had shown them made their hand shake, by means of which impediment they could not look steadily through the glass. Yet they thought they saw something like the gate, and also some of the glory of that place. Then they went away and sang this song, Thus by the shepherds secrets are revealed, which from all other men are kept concealed. Come to the shepherds then, if you would see things deep, things hid, and that mysterious be. When they were about to depart, one of the shepherds gave them a note of the way. Another of them bid them beware of the flatterer. The third bid them take heed that they sleep not upon the enchanted ground. And the fourth bid them Godspeed. So I awoke from my dream. And I slept, and dreamed again, and saw the same two pilgrims going down the mountains along the highway towards the city. Now a little below these mountains, on the left hand, lieth the country of Conceit, from which country there comes into the way in which the pilgrims walked a little crooked lane. Here, therefore, they met with a very brisk lad that came out of that country, and his name was Ignorance. So Christian asked him from what parts he came and whither he was going. Ignorance said, Sir, I was born into the country that lieth off there a little on the left hand, and I'm going to the celestial city. Christian said, But how do you think to get in at the gate? For you may find some difficulty there. Ignorance said, As other people do. And Christian said, But what have you to show at the gate that may cause that the gate should be open to you? Ignorance said, I know my Lord's will, and I've been a good liver. I pay every man his own. I pray, fast, pay tithes, and give alms, and have left my country for whither I am going. Christian said, But thou camest not in at the wicket gate that is at the head of this way. Thou camest in hither through that same crooked lane, and therefore I fear, however thou mayest think of thyself, when the reckoning day shall come, thou wilt have laid to thy charge that thou art a thief and a robber, instead of getting admittance into the city. Ignorance said, Gentlemen, ye be utter strangers to me. I know you not. Be content, and follow the religion of your country, and I will follow the religion of mine. I hope all will be well. And as for the gate that you talk of, all the world knows that there is a great way off of our country. I cannot think that any man in all our parts doth so much as know the way to it, nor need they matter whether they do or no, since we have, as you see, a fine, pleasant, green lane that comes down from our country the next way into the way. When Christian saw that the man was wise in his own conceit, he said to Hopeful whisperingly, There is more hope of a fool than of him. And said moreover, When he that is a fool walketh by the way, his wisdom faileth him, and he saith to every one that he is a fool. What, shall we talk further with him? or outgo him at present, and so leave him to think of what he hath already heard, and then stop again for him afterwards, and see if by degrees we can do any good to him? Then said Hopeful, Let ignorance a little while now muse on what is said, and let him not refuse good counsel to embrace, lest he remain still ignorant of what's the chiefest gain. God saith, those that no understanding have, although he made them he will not save. Hopeful said, he further added, It is not good, I think, to say all to him at once. Let us pass him by, if you will, and talk to him anon, even as he is able to bear it. So they both went on, and ignorance he came after. Now when they had passed him a little way, they entered into a very dark lane, where they met a man whom 7 devils had bound with 7 strong cords, and were carrying of him back to the door that they saw on the side of the hill. Now good Christian began to tremble, and so did Hopeful his companion. Yet as the devils led away the man, Christian looked to see if he knew him, and he thought it might be one Turnaway that dwelt in the town of Apostasy. But he did not perfectly see his face, for he did hang his head like a thief that is found. But being once past, Hopeful looked after him, and espied on his back a paper with this inscription, Wanton professor and damnable apostate. Then said Christian to his fellow, Now I call to remembrance that which was told me of a thing that happened to a good man hereabout. The name of the man was Little Faith, but a good man, and he dwelt in the town of Sincere. The thing was this. At the entering in at this passage, there comes down from the Broadway gate a lane called Dead Man's Lane, so called because of the murders that are commonly done there. And this Little Faith, going on pilgrimage, as we do now, chanced to sit down there and slept. Now there happened, at that time, to come down the lane from Broadway gate 3 sturdy rogues, and their names were Faint Heart, Mistrust, and Guilt, 3 brothers. And they, espying Little Faith where he was, came galloping up with speed. Now the good man was just awake from his sleep, and was getting up to go on his journey. So they came up all to him, and with threatening language bid him stand. At this, Little Faith looked as white as a clout, and had neither power to fight nor fly. Then said Faint Heart, Deliver thy purse. But he, making no haste to do it, for he was loath to lose his money, Mistrust ran up to him, and thrusting his hand into his pocket, pulled out thence a bag of silver. Then he cried out, Thieves, thieves! With that, Guilt, with a great club that was in his hand, struck Little Faith on the head, and with that blow felled him flat to the ground, where he lay bleeding as one that would bleed to death. All this while the thieves stood by. But, at last, they hearing that some were upon the road, and fearing lest it should be one Great Grace that dwells in the city of Good Confidence, they betook themselves to their heels, and left this good man to shift for himself. Now after a little while, Little Faith came to himself, and getting up made shift to scrabble on his way. This was the story. Hopeful said, But did they take from him all that ever he had? Christian said, No. The place where his jewels were they never ransacked, so those he kept still. But as I was told, the good man was much afflicted for his loss, for the thieves got most of his spending money. That which they got not, as I said, were jewels. Also, he had a little odd money left, but scarce enough to bring him to his journey's end. Nay, if I was not misinformed, he was forced to beg as he went to keep himself alive, for his jewels he might not sell. But beg and do what he could, he went, as we say, with many a hungry belly the most part of the rest of the way. Hopeful said, But is it not a wonder they got not from him his certificate, by which he was to receive his admittance at the celestial gate? And Christian said, It is a wonder, but they got not that, though they missed it not through any good cunning of his. For he, being dismayed with their coming upon him, had neither power nor skill to hide anything. So it was more by good providence than by his endeavor that they missed of that good thing. Hopeful said. But it must needs be a comfort to him that they got not his jewels from him. And Christian said it might have been great comfort to him had he used it as he should. But they that told me the story said that he made but little use of it all the rest of the way, and that because of the dismay that he had in taking away his money, indeed he forgot in a great part of the rest of his journey. And besides, when at any time it came into his mind, and he began to be comforted therewith, then would fresh thoughts of his loss come again upon him, and those thoughts would swallow up all. Hopeful said, alas, poor man, this could not but be a great grief to him. Christian said, grief, aye, a grief indeed. Would it not have been so to any of us, had we been used as he to be robbed and wounded too, and that in a strange place as he was? It is a wonder he did not die with grief, poor heart. I was told that he scattered almost all the rest of the way with nothing but doleful and bitter complaints, telling also to all that overtook him, or that he overtook in the way as he went, where he was robbed and how, who they were that did it and what he lost, how he was wounded, and that he hardly escaped with his life. Hopeful said, but it is a wonder that his necessity did not put him upon selling or pawning some of his jewels, that he might have wherewith to relieve himself in his journey. Christian said, thou talkest like one upon whose head is the shell to this very day. For what should he pawn them, or to whom should he sell them? In all that country where he was robbed, his jewels were not accounted of, nor did he want that relief which could from thence be administered to him. Besides, had his jewels been missing at the gate of the celestial city, he had, and that he knew well enough, been excluded from an inheritance there. And that would have been worse to him than the appearance and villainy of 10,000 thieves. Hopeful said, why art thou so tart, my brother? Esau sold his birthright, and that for a mess of pottage. And that birthright was his greatest jewel, and if he, why might not little faith do so too? Christian said, Esau did sell his birthright indeed, and so do many besides. And by doing so exclude themselves from the chief blessing, as also that caitiff did. But you must put a difference betwixt Esau and little faith, and also betwixt their estates. Esau's birthright was typical, but little faith's jewels were not so. Esau's belly was his God, but little faith's belly was not so. Esau's want lay in his fleshly appetite. Little face did not so. Besides, Esau could see no further than to the fulfilling of his lust. Behold, I am at the point to die, said he, and what profit shall this birthright do me? But little faith thought it was his lot to have but a little faith, was by his little faith kept from such extravagances, and made to see and prize his jewels more than to sell them, as Esau did his birthright. You read not anywhere that Esau had faith, no, not so much as a little. Therefore, no marvel if, where the flesh only bears sway, as it will in that man where no faith is to resist, if he sells his birthright, and his soul and all, and that to the devil of hell. For it is with such, as it is with the ass, who in her occasions cannot be turned away. When their minds are set upon their lust, they will have them whatever they cost. But little faith was of another temper. His mind was on things divine. His livelihood was upon things that were spiritual and from above. Therefore, to what end should he that is of such a temper sell his jewels, had there been any that would have bought them, to fill his mind with empty things? Will a man give a penny to fill his belly with hay? Or can you persuade the turtle dove to live upon carrion like the crow? Though faithless ones can, for carnal lust, pawn or mortgage, or sell what they have, or themselves outright to boot, yet they that have faith, saving faith, though but a little of it, cannot do so. Here, therefore, my brother, is thy mistake. And Hopeful said, I acknowledge it. But yet you, or your severe reflection, has almost made me angry. Christian said, Why? I did but compare thee to some of the birds that are of the brisker sort, who will run to and fro in untrodden paths with the shell upon their heads. But pass by that, and consider the matter under debate, and all shall be well betwixt thee and me. But Christian, said Hopeful, these three fellows, I'm persuaded in my heart, are but a company of cowards. Would they have run else, think you, as they did at the noise of one that was coming up on the road? Why did not little faith pluck up a greater heart? He might, methinks, have stood one brush with them and have yielded when there had been no remedy. And Christian said, that they are cowards, many have said, but few have found it so in the time of trial. As for a great heart, little faith had none. And I perceive by thee, my brother, hadst thou been the man concerned, thou art but for a brush, and then to yield. And verily, since this is the height of thy stomach, now they are at a distance from us, should they appear to thee as they did to him, they might put thee to second thoughts. But consider again, they are but journeyman thieves. They serve under the king of the bottomless pit, who, if need be, will come into their aid himself, and his voice is as the roaring of a lion. I myself have been engaged as this little faith was, and I found it a terrible thing. These three villains set upon me, and I, beginning like a Christian to resist, they gave but a call, and in came their master. I would, as the saying is, have given my life for a penny, but that as God would have it, I was clothed with armor of proof. Aye, and yet, though I was so harnessed, I found it hard work to quit myself like a man. No man can tell what in that combat attends us, but he that hath been in the battle himself. Hopeful said, Well, but they ran, you see, when they did but suppose that one great grace was in the way. True, said Christian, they have often fled, both they and their master, when great grace hath but appeared. And no marvel, for he is the king's champion. But I trow, you will put some difference betwixt little faith and the king's champion. All the king's subjects are not his champions, nor can they, when tried, do such feats of war as he. Is it meet to think that a little child should handle Goliath as David did? Or that there should be the strength of an ox in a ren? Some are strong, some are weak. Some have great faith, some have little. This man was one of the weak, and therefore he went to the wall. Hopeful said, I would it had been great grace for their sakes. Christian said, if it had been, he might have had his hands full. For I must tell you that though great grace is excellent good at his weapons, and has and can, so long as he keeps them at sword's point, do well enough with them. Yet if they get within him, even faint heart, mistrust, or the other, it shall go hard, but they will throw up at his heels. And when a man is down, what can he do? Whoso looks well upon great grace's face shall see those scars and cuts there, that shall easily give demonstration of what I say. Yea, once I heard that he should say, and that when he was in the combat, we despaired even of life. How did these sturdy rogues and their fellows make David groan, mourn, and roar? Yea, Heman and Hezekiah too, though champions in their day, were forced to bestir them when by these assaulted. And yet, notwithstanding they had their coats soundly brushed by them, Peter, upon a time, would go try what he could do. But though some do say of him that he is the prince of the apostles, they handled him so, that they made him at last afraid of a sorry girl. Besides, their king is at their whistle. He is never out of hearing. And if at any time they be put to the worst, he, if possible, comes in to help them. And of him it is said, the sword of him that layeth at him cannot hold the spear, the dart, nor the habergeon. He esteemeth iron as straw, and brass as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned with him into stubble. Darts are counted as stubble. He laugheth at the shaking of a spear. What can a man do in this case? It is true, if a man could at every turn have Job's horse, and had skill and courage to ride him, he might do notable things. For his neck is clothed with thunder. He will not be afraid of the grasshopper. The glory of his nostrils is terrible. He paweth in the valley, and rejoiceth in his strength. He goeth on to meet the armed men. He mocketh at fear, and is not affrighted, neither turneth he back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, the glittering spear and the shield. He swalloweth the ground with fierceness and rage, neither believeth he that it is the sound of the trumpet. He saith among the trumpets, Ha, ha! And he smelleth the battle afar off, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. But for such footmen as thee and I are, let us never desire to meet with an enemy, nor vaunt as if we could do better when we hear of others that they have been foiled, nor be tickled at the thoughts of our own manhood, for such commonly come by the worst when tried. Witness Peter, of whom I made mention before. He would swagger, he would, as his vain mind prompted him to say, do better, and stand more for his master than all men. But who so foiled and run down by these villains as he? When therefore we hear that such robberies are done on the king's highway, two things become to us to do. First, to go out harnessed, and to be sure to take a shield with us. For it was for want of that he that laid so lustily at Leviathan could not make him yield. For indeed, if that be wanting, he fears us not at all. Therefore, he that hath had skill hath said, above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. Second, it is good also that we desire of the king a convoy, yea, that he will go with us himself. This made David rejoice when in the valley of the shadow of death, and Moses was rather for dying where he stood than to go one step without his God. O my brother, if he will but go along with us, what need we be afraid of 10,000s that shall set themselves against us? But without him, the proud helpers fall under the slain. I, for my part, have been in the fray before now, and though, through the goodness of him that is best, I am, as you see, alive, yet I cannot boast of my manhood. Glad shall I be if I meet with no more such brunts, though I fear we are not got beyond all danger. However, since the lion and the bear have not as yet devoured me, I hope God will also deliver us from the next uncircumcised Philistine. Then sang Christian, poor little faith, hast been among the thieves, wast robbed, remember this, whoso believes, and gets more faith, shall then a victor be over 10,000, else scarce over thee. So they went on, and ignorance followed. They went then till they came at a place where they saw a way put itself into their way, and seemed withal to lie as straight as the way which they should go. And here they knew not which of the two to take, for both seemed straight before them. Therefore here they stood still to consider. And as they were thinking about the way, behold, a man, black of flesh, but covered with a very light robe, came to them and asked them why they stood there. They answered that they were going to the celestial city, but knew not which of these ways to take. Follow me, said the man. It is thither that I am going. So they followed him in the way, but now came into the road, which by degrees turned them so from the city that they desired to go to, that in a little time their faces were turned away from it. Yet they followed him. But by and by, before they were aware, he led them both within the compass of a net, in which they were both so entangled that they knew not what to do. And with that the white robe fell off the black man's back. Then they saw where they were. Wherefore, there they lay crying some time, for they could not get themselves out. Then said Christian to his fellow, Now do I see myself in error. Did not the shepherds bid us beware of the flatterers? As is the saying of the wise man, so we have found it this day. A man that flattereth his neighbor spreadeth a net for his feet. Hopeful said they also gave us a note of directions about the way, for our more sure finding thereof. But therein we have also forgotten to read and have not kept ourselves from the pass of the destroyer. Here David was wiser than we, for saith he, concerning the works of men, by the word of thy lips I have kept me from the pass of the destroyer. Thus they lay bewailing themselves in the net. At last they espied a shining one coming towards them with a whip of small cord in his hand. When he was come to the place where they were, he asked them whence they came and what they did there. They told him that they were poor pilgrims going to Zion, but were led out of the way by a black man clothed in white, who bid us, said they, follow him, for he was going thither too. Then said he with the whip, it is flatterer, a false apostle, that hath transformed himself into an angel of light. So he rent the net and let the men out. Then said he to them, follow me, that I may set you in your way again. So he led them back to the way which they had left to follow the flatterer. Then he asked them, saying, where did you lie the last night? And they said, with the shepherds upon the delectable mountains. He asked them then if they had not of those shepherds heard a note of direction for the way. And they answered, yes. But did you, said he, when you were at a stand, pluck out and read your note? And they answered, no. He asked them why. They said they forgot. He asked moreover if the shepherds did not bid them beware of the flatterer. They answered, yes. But we did not imagine, said they, that this fine-spoken man had been he. Then I saw in my dream that he commanded them to lie down, which, when they did, he chastised them sore to teach them the good way wherein they should walk. And as he chastised them, he said, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous, therefore, and repent. This done, he bid them go on their way and take good heed to the other directions of the shepherds. So they thanked him for all his kindness and went softly along the right way, singing, come hither, you that walk along the way, see how the pilgrims fare that go astray. They catched her in an entangling net, because they good counsel lightly did forget. 'Tis true they rescued were, but yet you see, they're scourged to boot. Let this your caution be. And with that, we'll finish for tonight. See you soon. Hope to see you next week as we continue with the Pilgrim's Progress. And I want you to know that we are getting very near the end, which for Christian means that we're getting very near to the celestial city. So you don't want to miss that. And if you haven't caught up with all the reading, you want to go back and check that out too. See you soon. Love you all. Bye.